Welcome to the She Said Privacy, He Said Security podcast. Like any good marriage, we will debate, evaluate, and sometimes quarrel about how privacy and security impact business in the 21st century.
Hi, Jody Daniels here. I'm the founder and CEO of Clover Advisors, a certified women's privacy consultancy. I'm a privacy consultant and certified informational privacy professional, providing practical privacy advice to overwhelmed companies.
Hi, Justin Daniels here. I am passionate about helping companies solve complex cyber and privacy challenges during the life cycle of their business. I'm the cyber quarterback helping clients design and implement cyber plans, as well as helping them manage and recover from data breaches.
And this episode is brought to you by... like the quietest drum roll, total Monday drum roll. Clover Advisors. We help companies to comply with data privacy laws and establish customer trust so that they can grow and nurture integrity. We work with companies in a variety of fields, including technology, SaaS, e-commerce, media, and professional services. In short, we use data privacy to transform the way companies do business. Together, we're creating a future where there's greater trust between companies and consumers. To learn more, visit redcloveradvisors.com.
Monday.
It's Monday. You're tired.
Okay.
You're going to kick us off?
I can. How should I kick us off?
Well, who's our special guest today?
Oh, I'll introduce our special guest. So Sean Herman is the founder and chief executive officer at Kinzu, a company with the mission to be the most trusted brand for incorporating technology into our children's lives. In 2019, he wrote Screen Captured to provide new and more productive ways for parents and families to think about technology and screen time.
Welcome, Sean, to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So we always like to start and understand how people came to where they are. So fill us in a little bit of how your career evolved to starting Kinzu.
Sure. Yes, my path was a path less traveled, I would say. Growing up, I didn't have aspirations of being a tech founder or an author for that matter. I had a long career actually in finance and corporate finance. That's my background and my, my professional training. So for a number of years, was just climbing the corporate ladder, working in treasury and M&A and doing these sorts of things, working with a lot of spreadsheets. The company that I was with went into a merger, and the writing was kind of on the wall that it wasn't going to be a good place to be, even if we made it through kind of the consolidation process. So at that time, I started kind of reaching out to my network and looking for opportunities. And also in my background, I had done a little bit of business analysis and project management for IT projects, but more on the business side, on the finance side. So I came across a pretty unique opportunity to kind of run a startup for there were founders and there were investors, but they need someone to run the day-to-day. This particular product was kind of a product looking for its place. As I was kind of looking for different use cases that we could find for the product, something interesting started to happen. My daughter actually became the super user of that product, which was really around moving video around in private networks. And we had just moved cities, and she started using it to send videos back to her grandparents and some friends back in Calgary, where we had moved from. And watched that for a little while. I didn't think a whole lot of it, and eventually one day said, "Okay, let's find a tool that's better and actually built for kids to do this sort of thing." And that's when I surveyed the market, and there was only one product I could find on the market, and it came from Facebook. That was a non-starter for me, and that led me to kind of see the opportunity, feeling like there were probably other parents out there that felt the same way as I did, who wouldn't let my then 7-year-old anywhere near a Facebook product. So that led me to writing a business case for what became Kinzu. Ended up getting funding and basically started the company and the product, and that was back in 2018.
As a former accountant, I love the transition from finance into entrepreneurship and technology. Super interesting.
Yeah, thank you. It's certainly, like I say, the path less traveled. I think most tech founders tend to come from tech. I think there's advantages and disadvantages, but yeah, certainly when it comes to understanding the business and the underlying business models and things like that, it's certainly come in handy. Being able to work around spreadsheets and things like that as well. But yeah, if you asked me, 5-10 years ago, if this is where I thought it would be, not a chance. But I'm glad it worked out this way.
Why don't we start about at the top? What is the Kinzu mission?
Yeah, you touched on it in the intro. So basically, Kinzuz Mission is to become the most trusted brand for incorporating technology into our children's lives. It's a very carefully crafted mission, and I think the key words in there are incorporating technology. Um, which kind of speaks to our broader vision, which is the fact that kids are using technology. So it's not a matter. I don't believe it's a matter of if they're going to use technology or when they're going to use technology. But instead, it's more important how they're using technology. So it speaks to that. And then into our children's lives, it's very intentional as well. We're a group of parents and people with children in our lives that care very much about privacy and safety when it comes to children and kind of doing the right things when it comes to technology. And underlying looking at the issue that I had with Facebook making a product for kids, basically was able to really rally a number of people around our mission and people that believe very much that there's a real need here that needs and a very real problem that needs to be solved. But Facebook and big tech shouldn't be the answer. And that's something that we are trying to fill every day.
So can you dive a little deeper into what Kinzu is? How does a parent use this to help with the technology that their children are using?
For sure. So Kinzu is it's a messaging platform at its core. So basically a private messenger, a WhatsApp of sorts for kids. We try not to describe ourselves too much that way. We are very different at the end of the day, but Kinzu was built to be a messenger that basically connects children to the closest people in their lives. So basically, the main use cases around Kinzu are connecting children to their parents, to grandparents, to uncles, aunties, cousins, very best friends, and that sort of thing. So the messenger and the number of contacts that children are meant to interact with is quite small, controlled. But the history behind the name Kinzu is also important. So kin is kinship, so friends and family is what that speaks to. And then zoo is an analogy that we use often, which is when we go to the zoo, we let our children kind of explore freely, and we let them do that because there's the right structures in place to keep everything safe, or the right structures in place to keep everything safe. And that's basically the approach that we took to Kinzu. Is we're not trying to create an environment where every move the child makes is monitored and checked off and things like that. But instead, we really focused on privacy and security by design to make sure that everything was designed with the proper guardrails in place. And most of what happens from the safety standpoint happens early on in the processes. So when parents actually sign onto the app, when they choose who the children can connect with, and then what we're trying to do is create that environment where children can have a little bit more freedom within the app to connect with people, to do other things in the app, whether it's video calling or exploring creativity a little bit. We've built a number of tools for children to do that, learn new things. We've got something called a mechanism that we call paths in the app, which basically is a way for us to push different types of content to children that's sort of educational / entertainment based. So things like podcasts, things like we've worked with NASA on sharing images from the Hubble telescope. So there's a lot kind of going on inside the app, but it's really built on that foundation of safety by design. So hopefully parents can, the ultimate goal of Kinzu is if a parent looks over their children's shoulder, sees them on an app, sees the Kinzu logo, they're going to know that the children are in a good place. And that's really what we're trying to do.
Can you share a little bit about what some of those safety features are that you built into the tool?
Sure. Basically, the way that I can back up and say before we wrote a line of code, there's a great organization in the US called KidSafe. They work out of California, and basically they're an expert in the Children's Online Privacy and Protection Act, or COPPA, which is an act that kind of oversees all apps and games and everything else that's directed at children, really with privacy at the core. So we were able to consult with them and find ways to basically the things that we're looking to do are when a parent signs up for the app, how do we prove that they're a parent? How do we prove that they're an adult? So basically a lot of the onboarding workflow that we've built around that. And then secondly is when they set up a child account underneath that, it's very important that the parent understands the type of information that children are going to be able to share, personal information, and basically are made aware of all of that as well as consent to it. In the actual structure of Kinzu was designed to be data minimalist. So basically, we actually maintain a spreadsheet still of every single data point that we capture on both a parent user and a child user. Every single data point that we capture, we have to justify why we capture that. And the way that we do that is actually justifying that we capture that data point in a way that's going to benefit the user or feed us with information to better, build out the service and understand what we need to do better. So basically a lot of kind of what we did is really foundational and built in things that the user will probably not see at the end of the day, but really embedded in kind of the structure of Kinzu. The way that children connect with friends, basically, if you have two friends that want to connect, you need a parent or guardian on both sides to approve the connection. So it requires kind of two-way connection. And what we end up with is basically a really strong foundation that's kind of a sum of greater than the sum of its parts. And that's basically what we ended up building with KidSafe is almost a new way of kind of dealing with parental verification, what data that we capture from children, how we use that data. And again, it's really built in a very data minimalist way because we deal with children.
I love all these friendly privacy terms. Makes my heart happy.
I guess the question I have listening to this is, how do parents figure out how technology can help solve a technology problem?
Yeah, it's a great question. I reflect back to even with my own children growing up and a number of friends that I have or people that I've kind of seen over the years. What I often saw was basically technology was kind of this evil force that was kind of always hanging above. So as the children are aging up, maybe they're watching some YouTube or, doing things like that. But in terms of getting into kind of connected technology where, they're starting to connect with other people, chat with other people, kind of move beyond pure consumption, it felt like technology was just kind of this thing that was hanging over the head. And eventually one day it was going to be allowed. But when it was allowed, basically it seemed like the floodgates were kind of wide open. So it was like, okay, you can have the Snapchat or you can have the, nowadays we'd be talking TikTok or whatever it might be. So, okay, fine, you can have the Snapchat account. But what I didn't see a lot of is kind of parental intervention in that. So it's kind of hold it off as long as you can. But then when you're going to allow it, you tell the child to be safe and they'd be on their way. What we're trying to help build is better ways that parents can actually explore technology together with their kids, and I think that's extremely important. So that starts with everything from sharing technology. We've built a number of experiences within the Kinzu app that are going to what we hope they're going to do is prompt a lot of conversation. So that can be everything from how you set a password, a good password, to how do you detect, possible grooming and things like that, and what to do about it. So I think what parents need to do, and I think the shift that I see happening is parents to kind of lean into technology and start using technology alongside the kids. And again, that kind of goes back to this realism that I think that's out there is when it comes to kids, technology isn't going anywhere, and there's a lot of pressure, coming from children to use it earlier and earlier. At the end of the day, obviously, we are a tech company, and part of that is because we really believe in the potential of technology for kids. I think technology offers a lot of upside, but there's obvious risks. And what we're also trying to do as a company is, can we really lean into the positive aspects of technology, which we deem to be, connection, creativity, and cultivating skills and interests, and um, being inspired, and things like that. But can we lean into those while stripping away the negative aspects? And that can be everything from privacy and data, targeted advertising, dark patterns, all of these sort of things that are being used. And typically what we see is adult platforms, and especially big tech, they have gotten extremely good at two things. They're meant to engage us, maximize engagement, and also to grow as quickly as possible. And there's a lot of that kind of bleeds into the design of the app. And when I started to see those patterns kind of showing up in children's apps, whether from big tech or others, that's where I get pretty uncomfortable. So it's a long-winded answer, but I think at the end of the day, I think what I'm actually seeing is more and more technologies parents taking the step of leaning into technology with their kids, learning what their kids want to use, but more importantly, why they want to use it. And I think we can understand that most of the motivation is a lot of the same things I had when I was a kid, in order to hang out with friends and learn things, and things like that. But there's no doubt, I think better solutions are still needed. But we are seeing, I think, a lot of positive movement there.
So it sounds like what you're saying is we as parents have to really take ownership over working with our kids around what they're going to watch, who they're going to connect with. Because I think we see far too many times, you go to dinner and you see everybody on their devices and they aren't speaking. But having said that, if we want to deploy your technology in some of the circumstances you talk about it, parents really have to rethink how they associate with the technology and the kids. Do you have some thoughts on how we as parents need to rethink that?
Yeah, I do. And yeah, that's well said. I think that's exactly the case. I think, and I'm not, I'll never judge any parent. And basically, I think technology is very much up to the individual and the household, and how they feel. And I don't think there's any right age for children to get onto, say, connected technology, or even YouTube or these sort of things. So I've got a 4-year-old and an 11-year-old, and absolutely, do we give them the iPad sometimes to give ourselves a little peace and quiet? Of course we do. I think every parent does. What I think becomes more and more important is we understand what they're using, why, how it works, and what the motivations of that company are. So what I'm talking about is parents taking a little bit more of a role in thinking a little more critically through technology, through the platforms the kids are using. What are the motivations of the platform? Ad-driven platforms work for advertisers, not the user. They're going to work with the user in terms of, like, how do we keep them on the platform for as long as possible, clicking around as much as possible, and so we can show more and more ads. So I think there's a minimum amount of kind of knowledge that we as parents should really learn and think about when our kids are using technology. And again, it's not to say all technology is bad, or you're being a bad parent if you let your kids on the iPad. Like, we all do these sort of things, but I think it's really leaning in and just taking the extra steps of understanding. Again, speaking with your kid on why they want to use the platforms that they do. A lot of times it's very innocent, but also understanding as a parent, are there risks involved with any particular platform? Roblox, good example. Millions and millions of kids use Roblox. There is a chat function that we need to be aware of. There are ways to turn it off, to manage it. So understanding why your child wants to use Roblox, taking a look at what are the controls. And the good thing is most big platforms have very good parental controls nowadays. So really understanding those and how to manage. And so when you think your child is ready for technology, I think that it's very important to speak through it. And from my own experiences, kids are very willing to share why they want to use something, what they like about it, and happy to kind of show you through the various aspects of the app as well.
One of the challenges that people have is, adults included, is we're addicted to these things. We want to use them all the time. What are your thoughts on maybe ways that parents can help manage screen time? If there's any features that you've seen or other options to help maybe even themselves with this challenge.
Yeah, I dove into this subject quite extensively in my book. Addic- Addiction is a bit of a controversial word. So, we can say addiction, or we can just say, stickiness, or whatever we want to call it, obsession or compulsion, whatever it might be. At the end of the day, I say our kids or we aren't necessarily addicted. The fact is, these platforms have existed for 15, 20 years now. They have nearly perfected all of the patterns, and using kind of our own brains, I don't want to say against us, but they've really understood the human condition and motivation and how to keep us connected on platforms. So when we're talking about bigger platforms like Facebook and to a lesser degree, I think we see TikTok and Snapchat and those, but everything from the like buttons, kind of creating this competitive nature around followers and how many likes did my post get, and tapping into the kind of the human psyche as a way to kind of again, they're motivated as ad-driven platforms to keep us on the platform for as long as possible, so they can show us the most ads, and they've gotten extremely good at kind of gaming the human condition to keep us on the platform for as long as possible. So what I think it's important for us to know is hopefully recognizing that in our own patterns. I think parents, I do talk about this a lot in my book as well, is oftentimes we'll kind of see a parent scold a child for being on the iPad too much, and then they kind of turn back to their own Instagram feed or whatever it might be. So I think leading by example, and also being mindful of our own behavior when it comes to screens, because I think a lot of us would probably say we spend more time on screens than we think or we would hope. So when it comes to children, I think especially under the age of 13, which is where a lot of the regulation kind of is written for children under the age of 13. It kind of became a magic age. I don't think I don't think something magic happens to the child when they turn 13, but that's kind of the guidepost. But for any application that the terms of service will say for 13 plus, so we're talking about everything from Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, a lot of the bigger apps out there. They're going to have those patterns in them, and again, they're ad-driven platforms. So if we're going to let our children on them, I think we need to be very much aware of that, and have to watch the behavior of the child very closely. If children are using those platforms to connect with friends and family and things like that, I think that's okay. But what I'm watching for is, are they putting up posts? Are things like likes and followers very meaningful to them? Those are kind of warning signs, and those are kind of the baseline of how those platforms kind of keep us really engaged or hooked. It is putting up a post, how many likes am I getting? How did it perform versus my last post? How do I do better next time? It's a lot of that anticipation. So yes, I think at the end of the day, it's parents understanding, we're susceptible to, and if we are going to open up those type of platforms in our households for younger children, or even when our children are tweens or teens, I think just understanding and again, hopefully having productive conversations with your children on what platforms they're using, why they're using it, and then just looking for those kind of warning signs of, is this heavily kind of curated, competitive kind of environment really getting to them? And that's what I worry about a lot when it comes to kids, and especially in the light of research and Francis Hogan and a lot of that sort of thing, that there is evidence now that it's starting to be, there's evidence that it's detrimental to the mental health of youth, and far from proven. But I think where there's smoke, there's fire, and then there are some really troubling things going on in terms of trends when it comes to anxiety and depression, and even suicide rates among youth.
Absolutely. You mentioned that many of the apps these days have parental controls. And I was hoping that maybe you could share a good privacy or security tip related to those parental controls that our listeners may not know about and that they want to be paying attention to?
Sure. At even at the operating system level, so whether you're on Android or iOS, I think that there's very good parental controls built into that. Just anecdotely, I would suspect probably less than 1 in 5 parents actually uses those or really understands what they can do. When we hear, terrible stories about children, spending thousands and thousands of dollars in app and things like that, these parental controls can really manage that. You can set up screen time boundaries per child and these sort of things. So even at the operating system level, I think that those are good. So a tip would be, parents to understand what those are, why they exist, how they work. It's quite easy once you get in there. Set up a child account for your child and basically set up the parental controls that you like. Aside from that, if you're going to let your child onto platforms such as TikTok, TikTok does have good resources on their website. So should children be using TikTok? That's an entirely different debate. Should any household decide that it's okay, I'm okay with my child consuming some content, I don't want them to post or things like that. If you visit the website of these companies, there's extensive resources. They've had to kind of answer a lot of the kind of questions around this. So I would say it's really as simple as educating yourself. If you're going to allow your child on one of these platforms that do have some negative, there's potential negative things going on the platform, to as a parent go on and look at what resources are available. If there isn't much available, I'd probably question if that's a platform your child should be on. And then to get back to, I think what we are seeing is more and more purpose-built platforms like Kinzu are starting to emerge, which I think is a good thing. I think there's been kind of a widespread realization that kids are using technology and that the tools that they're using aren't very good, and in most cases it's back to that, okay, I'm going to let you on Snapchat because there isn't really anything else out there that's a quick and easy way for you to connect with friends, let's say. So we are starting to see more and more platforms like Kinzu kind of emerge that are really built with the unique needs of children at the core. And as I say, we're hoping to be a solution. But for parents, I would just say there's a lot of resources out there, good resources. And just to start to, I know we're busy, but I think that's part of the responsibility if you're going to open up, these potential risks of the big platforms, to get in and see what's available to you, and then take advantage of the parental controls.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. I know we'll be going when time they don't have access to all those things.
So Sean, when you're not out advocating for children and technology, what do you like to do for fun?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I've got an 11-year-old and a 4-year-old. So my 4-year-old is getting into all of the sports. He's kind of getting to that age. So he's you'll see us on the soccer pitch and swimming and getting into skating and hockey later this year. So really excited about that. My getaway is golf, is and always has been. So I still get out once or twice a week. I'm able to get out and play some golf. And what's great is even just on Friday night, my 4-year-old, he's loving golf. So he got to ride the power cart for the very first time. We drove around the course, but he also loves to come out and hit the ball around. So we have a great time. So yeah, it's a lot of fun that he's able to kind of get out and we're starting to share golf together. And aside from that, yeah, I wish I had more, free time, but yeah, just normal things, like to hang out with friends, do things with the family and such.
Well, that sounds so lovely. We're so grateful that you joined us today. If people would like to connect with you and learn more about Kinzu, where should they go?
So if they want to learn more about Kinzu, it's kinzu.com is the website. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm also on Twitter at ThatDigitalDad. I also publish a newsletter every other week, kind called That Digital Dad. And basically, we just dive into kind of what's topical in terms of children and technology. So people can feel free to subscribe to that. I've been doing that for over a year now. So I think it's a great resource as well. But yeah, people can, I'm easy to find. Twitter, LinkedIn would be the best place to find me.
Excellent. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate all the wonderful tips to try and continue to keep children safe as they use technology.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to the She Said Privacy, He Said Security podcast. If you haven't already, be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes and check us out on LinkedIn. See you next time.